Hi guys, welcome to this eventful DataGiri meetup. We're so pleased to see you guys in such numbers today. Uh, I don't think there can be a more historic event than this today for Mumbai, for DataGiri. Uh, so DJ is an iconic, the most legendary data scientist of all times. And we are all here today. We just, to mark this event, I don't think there's a better way than to stand up for our national anthem and say it all here. So can you please? Please sing with me. जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जनगण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे. Thank you so much. So my name is Shweta Doshi, and I'm one of the co-founders at DataGiri along with Mitul and Mayuresh. So I've worked for a decade across different technology roles with Accenture, Capgemini, and I have two of my bosses from those days, Shanti and Rashmi, both of them here, and I'm very happy to see you guys here. Uh, Increasingly, I've seen that most of the problems that we face in business are essentially data problems. And in my last stint, when I was working at Nielsen, we had acquired this company, Excelate, an Israel-based data and technology startup, and we were merging it into our SAP landscape. There were certain issues, and we were looking for help. We looked around, and we wanted to go to a meetup community where business problems, some real challenges could be discussed, and we found none. So that's the time me, Mitul, Mayuresh, we all had got together, and we thought that there needs to be a community, a meetup community where such business problems, challenges can be discussed, and we can collectively, collaboratively work as a community to get some real outcomes out of it. So we started DataGiri as one crazy experiment. We did our first event right here at Rise Mumbai. And I would just like to share a few words about Rise. So this is where you are right now, and this is what Rise is.
Innovation is everywhere. Change occurs rapidly from all parts of the globe. Rise provides us with a way to connect, a way to tap into the collective wisdom of the crowd, a way to co-create with the global Rise community. Scale your vision to the global market through Rise. This is an invitation to the innovators of the world. Connect, co-create, and scale. Welcome to Rise.
So RISE is one of the 7 open innovation centers of Barclays, and it offers co-working fintech ecosystem in India. RISE Mumbai embraces partners in the ecosystem to collaborate, co-create, and scale startups. DataGiri is one such example, one of RISE Mumbai's initial partners, and RISE is delighted to have us at this event today. Anybody who's interested to know more about what RISE does, please contact Roland or Prashanti. Cool. So it's our first anniversary today. DataGiri is 1 year old. And thank you. About a month back, Meetup started throwing us this message that, congratulations, it's going to be your first anniversary soon. So got us thinking that what should we do special for this event? And luckily, I think all the stars were aligned for us. DJ posted on LinkedIn that he's coming to India, and you know, we we just reached out that can you talk at DataGiri? He graciously accepted, and I think we are all here because of that. So across this 1 year, I mean, I'm sure some of y'all are attending this for the first time, but from our first event, we were very clear about one thing. We were always not for profit. So a lot of y'all have posted on this meetup that please increase the seats, please, add more people. We are ready to pay for it. But DataGiri is not for profit, and we want to keep this pure always that way. We're not here to sell anything, any product. We're just here to co-create things, to connect with people, to know more about data science always, and to build products. That's all we are here for. So starting from our first meetup, so we have 2 people again today who kicked off DataGiri from this very place. So we have Dr. N.R. Srinivasa. So he is the chief global data scientist at Infosys currently. And we have Krupal Modi. Krupal, where are you? So Krupal, basically, he heads all of machine learning at Haptic. So if you all have used the Haptic chatbot. So both of them, I mean, it's such a coincidence that today they are here as well for us. So thank you very much for coming. And while Dr. Srinivas spoke about, the emerging landscape of data science and its relevance in India, Krupal actually opened up the ML algorithms that drive the haptic chatbot. So, and you know what? 150 people turned up at that meetup. So we got the feeling that we are definitely doing something right. And from there on, we made it a point that in each meetup, we add a new theme. And at the end of it, make sure that people take away some hard learnings. So if you are a data enthusiast and you've come to the meetup first time and somebody is talking about CNN, right? You don't know what that is. So we make sure that we start from supervised, what is supervised learning, what is unsupervised learning, and then go on to some advanced stuff so that everybody derives value out of it. So people came back, and that kept on encouraging us. Now, without taking much of anybody's time now, we are very pleased to have DJ with us. Okay. How many of y'all are first timers at DataGiri? Okay. So we DataGiri is now across 8 cities in India, and Pune is the one that will definitely start doing meetups very soon. Yeah, we've got a lot of requests because it's tough for people to travel, but there's a lot of interest there as well. Yeah. How many of y'all are coming from outside Mumbai today? Cool. Thank you so much for traveling in the rain. So, DJ, I'm not going to say anything about you, who you are, what you've done. We just have this surprise for you, the DataGiri style.
Welcome to the DataGiri meetup with DJ Patil. DJ Patil has held a variety of roles in academia, industry, and government. Most recently, he was appointed by President Obama to be the first US chief data scientist at White House.
That's why I'm so pleased to welcome Dr. DJ Patil as the federal government's first chief data scientist.
Here, his efforts led to the establishment of 40 chief data officer roles across the federal government. In industry, he's led product teams at RelateIQ, which was later acquired by Salesforce. He was also the chief scientist, chief security officer, head of analytics and data product teams at LinkedIn. Here is where he co-coined the term data science. He has also held a number of roles at Skype, PayPal, and eBay. As a member of faculty at University of Maryland, his research focused on nonlinear dynamics and chaos theory. Here, he helped start a major research initiative on numerical weather prediction. In 2014, he was selected by the World Economic Forum as a young global leader and is also a member of the Council of Foreign Relations. So please join us in welcoming him to Mumbai and to DataGiri.
Can we have you on?
No, it should be okay. Yeah, just well right away.
So, I would just like to also call upon Dr. N.R. Srinivasa to just come up and say a few words about DJ and his journey as well.
Hey, thank you very much.
Very good afternoon to all of you. I should first congratulate DataGiri for inviting the rock star of data science, right? DJ Patil. It's an honor to be here at this event. And I'm also very happy that DataGiri has gone through 1 year. And I wish it many more years of success in bringing together people who are like-minded. Very quickly, I will not take much time. But I would like to thank Dr. DJ Patil for giving us a day job. And I have 2 or 3 posers for him. I hope he will answer some of them either during his talk or towards the end. One is that, I come from partial academic and industry background. I used to teach at Indian Institute of Science for 10 years and then moved on to industry. So I've seen both the sides of the world in terms of theory and application of theory. So what I have seen in recent days is that data science is becoming super specialized in terms of its application areas. So compared to what you originally devised it to be, like a science. So what are your thoughts on what people should upskill themselves for? First one. Second is, I also see that, there is this new bandwagon coming up called artificial intelligence. Now, there's a move in industry to package it as something slightly separate, thoda hatke from data science. So is that really true? So how should we all be prepared for the next wave of revolution? And thirdly, how should I keep my day job? Because I've seen that most recently, there's a lot of automation and AI that has got into data science itself. And a lot of, models can be really created by anyone. It's like handing over the surgeon's knife to anyone around, right? So go do the surgery. So what are the pros and cons of such an automation? And I think with that, I'll not take much more time, but it's a real pleasure to be with you and hope to interact with you in future.
Oh boy.
It's a painting that will always remind you of the Mumbai monsoons.
Oh, thank you very much. Fantastic. Thank you very much. I like it. All right. Maybe I can keep this here. Thank you very much. It's very kind. Pardon? I'm sorry. It's on? Yep. Okay. Those are really important questions, and I hope we're going to take time and get to all of them, especially in the Q&A. What I thought I would try to do here is give an extremely different kind of talk. Because we're all used to talking about the specifics of data. And one of the really good fortunes I've had is to look at data in a very different capacity with people that typically don't get a chance to use data in different ways to solve problems that happen at different scales. And I think there's a lot of very big parallels here for the entire Indian ecosystem and for every person. And so let me walk you through some of these things. So I can be found if you're trying to look for me on Twitter, there's two of me on Twitter. One is I can't actually check anymore because it's my official White House account. I don't have a job, and just in case it's clear. I'm no longer with the federal government. We have a different person. We can talk about that too. Well, maybe not. And you can find me on LinkedIn too. Those are the easiest ways. But let's start with, let's take a look at where we are right now as a world. And I think that we always love to complain about the world we live in. But if we take a look at where we've been and where we're going, it's really surprising. So, 10 years ago, those phones, 10 years ago, we're just now celebrating the anniversary of the iPhone. The phones didn't take really pictures. They were a little bit kind of low res pictures. We're still mostly on flip phones taking the pictures. They definitely did not take videos. Videos was like, wait, why would you take a video on a phone? That was really weird. Buying shoes on the internet was just a weird concept. Like, why would you ever do that? I remember when Mintra and everybody else was trying to think about like people would actually buy designer things on the web. That was like crazy talk. Carrying stacks of maps. When you showed up to an airport, you would get a stack of maps. Like now you don't just get a stack of maps. Like that's like, have you ever seen a map now? Like you have to go to a special or try to find a map or order a map now. That doesn't happen. The world we live in today, and this is a different, not the world we live in, the world we expect. A big difference between living in and expectation. The world we expect is instant customized news. All right, we don't just want news just kind of in a regular form factor. We want it tailored to us, being able to get it very rapidly digestible. I need to see real-time traffic. I need to see where to go, how to get there, extremely fast, on demand, wherever I need it. Although I'm learning in Bombay is, green on Google Maps means something different than what I'm used to. They're like, this is great, it's green. I'm like, wow. Maybe we'll get to do the U-turn some point. Car service on demand. Look at the growth of Ola. I mean, this is phenomenal how fast this goes. I remember meeting Bhavish very early on. For those that don't know, I was helping out Ola before I went to the government. And I remember meeting him and Ankit, two of the founders, very early on when you still had to call. And it was this idea of like, how are you supposed to get a car somewhere? You're like, well, you turn left at the big tree, and then you're gonna meet somebody, and he's gonna say age age, and then then it'll happen, right? All through a phone call. This idea of doing this on an app was just so far fetched. And now in the cars, you don't only have the car get to you in real time, you know how far it is, everything, but there's also videos and music. That's in less than less than 10 years. That's like 5 years of journey. That's how much has changed. We're getting to that world of one-day shipping, expectations of how fast content should get to you. You want it just that day. And, we're definitely seeing this now with Flipkart and others. Fitness trackers. We're entering a new era of medical journeys. The journey of medicine is changing so rapidly. We're fully instrumented. We compete on how many steps we take. But that's just the very beginning of what's happening, of how we think about our world and we interact with sensors. Our households are moving to having thermostats. We live in this connected world. And where expectations are changing exceptionally fast. So, as I've argued, we've seen a technology revolution and happen in a lifetime. And so what's sitting underneath that revolution? That foundation, of course, is data. It's a little self-serving, but yes, it's data. And the thing that is changing the most and going to carry this forward is really across a few of these dimensions, and we're going to see much more. We have the Internet of Things, instruments, sensors, products, all built together in different unique ways. These are new environments to build new products. And what I want you to think of is when we say a data product, most of the time we think of a data product as a graph, a chart, or something that's out there that we see data and we're able to measure and we'll quantify it. But the self-driving car is a data product too. It doesn't show you any data. The most sophisticated data product that you're probably using right now every day is a weather app sitting on petabytes of data. Extraordinary sensors, very sophisticated mathematics, and it shows you an icon. But the icon tells you what to do. Should you carry an umbrella? If you're going to travel to a new city, what should I carry? How should I pack? That little icon tells you how you should feel, how you should interact, and where you should take action. The most sophisticated data products always help facilitate an end goal. It's not just there to give you a bunch of data. Now, the data product for a pilot is a very different type of data product. It has a different level of sophistication. So that is that new shift that we're starting to enter, is not this one size fits all for data. And the idea of not this data is a bunch of spreadsheets or graphs, but actual real products that have disproportionate value. And so as we get in that, the next powerful one is this idea of what truly tailored medical treatments are. It's been a little over 10 years since we now can decode the human genome. Human genome sequence was first decoded. And as a result, do you have your genome on file? We don't have it. You don't go to a chemist, a hospital, your physician, and they look at your DNA and they say, hey, look, you know what? You should maybe think about this or this. We're not in that world yet. So why the separation from extraordinary amounts of data to really no use of data? Well, that's gap is this idea of where we really started around this idea of genomic and precision medicine, pushing the boundaries, changing the whole approach to it. And to power that, we need a different layer of things like machine learning, data science, AI, whatever you want to call these things. And that's going to empower that next wave of data products as well, like autonomous vehicles, self-driving cars, planes, ships of fleets, all of this, very rapidly changing. And by the way, some of these autonomous vehicles will be inside you. They'll be inside you, out there to clean out, your arteries, clean out, or take sensors and try to get it better. You don't have to get an endoscope. You can just take these pills with robotics that are self-unfolding and all these things. We're starting to get there. But that is where the next generation we have to go and do things. And so let me talk about how does that fit in from the national scale, at least from the United States perspective. Well, the mission statement of the United States Chief Data Scientist is to responsibly unleash the power of data to benefit all Americans. And like all things that are in government, typically you have a mission statement because that helps to know what to do, what to be, and also helps you figure out how to align with other parts of government. And so we spend a lot of time coming up with this mission statement. It's short also. It doesn't have like 15 semicolons like many mission statements from the government. And we do this, and sometimes we do that, and maybe that too. So it's nice, short, simple, but there's two parts that are really, really important that I think everyone should take away for what it means when we work with data. Responsibly and all. Now, obviously it's Americans because this is the United States Chief Data Scientist role. But for any data scientist, I think it's useful to ask ourselves, what does it mean to when we build something with the word responsibility and all people, all Indians? What does that look like? Responsibly, because just because we can doesn't mean we should with the data. How do we have that conversation? How do we start talking about it? What does that mean? What does ethics mean? All those things. How do we think about safeguarding the data? If you get a genomic test, your spouse gets a genomic test, that data is out there, your kid's data is effectively out there. That's how DNA works, at least from a probabilistic perspective. So now, what's the responsibility look like? These are the place where we're starting to get to. Also, with all Americans, the way I would say for India and for all of us are building on any type of platform, we should think of a technology as neither radical nor revolutionary unless it benefits everybody. Think about our technology today, the power that is. We can actually do tailored precision medicine right now. We can do it. If you are extraordinarily wealthy, you have a very set of specific type of cancers, and you live next to one of the elite medical institutions in the United States. That's about as far as you can get from everyone. So what does that look like? So let me give you an example. This year alone inside the United States, 11.4 million Americans are going to go through our 3,100 jails. So jail in the United States, there's two types of systems in the United States. There's jail and prison. Jail is typically you get in trouble, you got to go to the jail, you maybe have to post bond to bail to get out for a little bit, then you have your court case, and then if you get convicted of something serious, you go to prison and you actually do time, long-term time. Like you don't do like 10-year sentences typically in jail. That's not what the intent is. So, but look at that ratio of number, 11.4 million people going through 3,100 jail. That's incredible. But let's make it worse. They're going to stay there on average 23 days. 23 days they're staying there on average for that. 95% will never go to prison, never move on. We have created a cycle of incarceration where people are just cycling through and through and through and through. You don't just need to take this model, you can figure out a parallel model in all sorts of portions of society. The big point about this is who pays for this? Who's really paying for this? This economic cost, the economic cost is pulling money out of a system that would normally go to a teacher, a park, a road, a playground, something. We are draining our society through this inefficiency. And that's extremely painful to know. Take our largest jail, Cook County Jail. 90 plus acres, almost 93 acres of jail. Cell phones don't work for miles around this place. By the way, this is just a short drive from University of Chicago, one of the premier academic centers in the world, just miles. But everywhere around this jail, cell phones don't work for miles. Remember, we're talking just a jail, and it's 90 acres. 1/3 of the inmates have mental health issues. So where's the technology revolution for them? Because we talk about who pays for this. But when there's no cell phone for miles, there's no internet, because no one's willing to invest in this community, there's zero chance. They're not just paying in economic costs of dollars getting sucked out of the system. We are actively de-investing in a kid's future that lives there. We are penalizing through this system the children of these people, the relatives of these people. When we talk about that in tribal lands or rural environments, there's an interesting parallel here that's deeply, deeply troubling of how we think about investing. And so how do we start thinking about this? Where do we start going? So one of the things that was really powerful for us is when we get to meet people in the White House. And one of those people is Pete Early. That's Pete. He's actually a famous author. But more important is he's this father of Kevin Early. And Kevin has a disease, schizophrenia. It's a mental health issue. Sees hallucinations, sees things, causes all sorts of problems of psychotic episodes. And one day, Kevin broke into a neighbor's house, naked, crawled into the tub, and was having a psychotic episode. Naturally, they called the police. If you've read anything in the news, you know how our interactions with police of this type typically end up. Ends up very bad, oftentimes with the person being hurt, in some cases killed. Yet this officer had something different going for him. He had been trained in what's called crisis intervention to learn to recognize these symptoms. And instead of putting him in that jail system and just cycle him, he said, whoa, you know what? I'm going to take you to the right type of mental health institution. I'm going to get you to the right health institution, so you're going to get the treatment you need. There's zero value of me taking you to jail. I can put you in handcuffs, I can punch you, I can beat you up, I can even shoot you. But what about Pete in that case? He's thinking about the bigger picture. In that case, it worked. Kevin got the treatment he needs, happy family, holding a stable job. World's a much better place for everybody. So how do you scale that? How do you make that work for everybody? Well, it turns out Miami-Dade, Florida, county in the south in Florida, figured out that they have a similar model of this. And they said, we're going to train all of our officers in this crisis intervention technique. It's going to cost about $1.5 million US dollars to do this. And we're going to see what happens after a year. Here's the results. After 1 year alone, they were able to save more than $10 million just from this simple program. More importantly, they closed a full jail because it was empty. A little bit later on, by continuing this program, they closed the second jail. So what enabled that to happen? It's actually a data science problem, but not the way we think of one. What they simply do is the hospital has a bunch of data, the health system, and the doctors have, or the police have a lot of data, the criminal justice system. Yet this data never is shared because of privacy reasons. It's hard, people just don't want to do it. So they simply say, hey, we're the criminal justice system and we see these people cycling in and out, all these people who we constantly catch. And we know they have mental health issues and other things. So let's just come up with a list of who they are. And we're going to share it with, see if that same list is true that they have mental health issues over here. So we're literally passing spreadsheets. That's all we're doing. We're not, this is like no machine learning here. This is like, you know, we're like, the maximum function is you know how to sort an Excel spreadsheet. Like that's like what we're talking about. It's like, you know, it's like playing gin and rummy or go fish more. It's like, have you seen Sally? Nope. Okay, well, what about Shivani? Oh yeah, Shivani's on our list. Okay, great. When you see Shivani, don't take her to jail, take her to this thing. So that's how they rolled it out. And so we rolled it out nationally. We took that model and we made it a national effort, and it's called the Data-Driven Justice Initiative. It covers over 94 million Americans and involves 10 full states, and also is been starting to show wild success in the same way. And the point here that I'm trying to get across is data at its lowest form, working on this, what might seem like the most mundane problems, has a disproportionate impact in ways that aren't obvious. And you don't have to go to machine learning and AI. Just go to that. Now, to make this work at scale, now you got to bring a much more heavyweight machinery. You got to start building a platform, a technical platform that allows this to happen. And there's a consortium of classic Silicon Valley companies that have come together to say, we're going to build this and make this free for everyone to use. So, because we don't want people going and getting stuck in the wrong system. We had a similar one where we had a problem around officer involved shootings, harassment, questions around policing. And so what we did is we literally got all the police chiefs, all the civic activists, technologists, we put them in a room at the White House. We brought presidential cupcakes because they have nice seal and they always seem very fancy, and we locked the door. it's easy to lock the door at the White House and not let people leave because we have guards. So it's, but there's something interesting that came out. They said, hey, you know what? I don't know how my city is doing compared to your city. I'm like, really? You don't actually have any idea? There's no platform to say, city one, how do you compare with city two? Because in the financial world, you know exactly how to compare company A and B, but you can't do that around policing. So they said, yeah, well, what happens if we opened up all that data? So the cities all got together and said, we're going to open up that data. And they started what's called the Police Data Initiative. And here's something that's remarkable that comes out of this. So this is a superintendent of police. It's like the police chief of New Orleans. This is Grace Clark. She's 14. When you look at this picture, who's in the power position here? She's teaching him how to write his first line of code ever. Most of the time when we see pictures of this, we see the officer, you know, leaning down, talking to the kid, and like the body language is completely different. We've empowered a 14-year-old girl to teach the chief of police how to pull data on his own officers. Here's the best part. They pulled the data and he's like, I don't agree with this data. And she's like, what's the data? He's like, well, no, that doesn't match what I think of my officers doing. They're like, so now they're having a dialogue. They're having a conversation. And they get to start asking these questions and saying like, well, what's happening? Is this right or wrong? And they're engaging in a different way that never happens in the community. Data, when it's used to empower people, gives you a different ability to have the conversation. It lifts it up in a very different way. And if you can do that for a 14-year-old girl, you can do it anywhere in the world. And this is continuing to this day. And this is part of that power that we're seeing. So part of this is that we have to make technology work for us rather than against us. We have to figure out how to do that. And let's take, for example, Jennifer Bittner. Jennifer has metastatic breast cancer, stage 4, very serious. It's a death sentence. That's her husband, Rod. That's her beautiful baby boy. She wrote into President Obama to point out that there's the progress of science is going to go happen at a certain rate. There's her life expectancy. And science will not allow her to be able to see her child learn how to ride a bike, her child to be in a play. And she said, I think science should go faster. We read that and we said, you know, Jennifer's right. What happens if we unleash the full force of the entire United States of America to go after this problem? What would that look like? What would a true effort to let everybody try to work on a problem? And we started looking at that and we said, oh, you know what? It's actually a database. Actually, thousands of databases, because health data is broken up everywhere across thousands of databases. And the ability and the power that all of you singly have as data scientists and technical people is that you can bring that data together. You can carefully munge through it, bring it together with external data and try all sorts of incredible things if people give you permission. But right now we have a system in which the healthcare forces all this data to be broken up in all these different places. So what we said is, you know what, we're going to end that. We're going to find a common frameworks for people to bring data together, build the largest data set of genomic information across the most diverse genetic pool ever, which the United States has a benefit of having because we have so much diversity in the country. We're going to bring together all their sensor data, and we're going to allow scientists to start looking at it in a radically different approach, which is data science specific. We're going to start data mining on all of this to find the conditions and causes that lead to different diseases, including cancer. But it also includes type 2 diabetes, includes mental health issues. I don't care what you want to study as long as you have a chance to study it. And a data set that will allow you to take your results and get them into the science system. Because who we're fighting for is Jennifer. Who we're fighting for is her son and her husband. All of us have somebody whose lives have been touched by cancer or some other type of disease. We're all going to live longer. The probability that some of us come down with cancer is going to increase over our net lifetime as a result. We're living in different environments with different chemicals, different worldviews. We're going to have to get ready for this. And so making that investment now is critical. And that's why we came up with those two big programs. So what does Make America Great? We've got a president that loves to talk about it. So what does Make America Great? People from India. I resemble that remark. So let me introduce you to Matt Might. That's Matt, there with the beard. That's his son, Bertrand. Next to him is Mina Shung, who also worked with me on these initiatives. So Bertrand is an interesting case. When Bertrand was born, they found that he didn't produce tears when he cried. No tears. Took him to a doctor. Said, oh my gosh, your son is a sample size of 1. There's only one like him in the world. He has a genetic disease. I'm not sure exactly what type, but he's got this genetic disease. So Matt is a professor at University of Utah at the time, and he said, I don't buy into that. I believe that there's more people like that by the mathematics, so I'm going to go find him. So what he did is he wrote a blog post. The blog post was titled, Searching for My Son's Killer. And he optimized the blog post for search engine optimization that any parent who was searching for similar symptoms would come across his blog post and get in contact. So what happened? Suddenly a bunch of other parents said, hey, I have the same thing, and my doctor said my child is the only one. I don't believe it. Now they're a sample size of N. So they said, okay, well, let's try to get this. So he's got his Bertrand, they got in contact with Duke University. They got Bertrand's DNA carefully sequenced at the highest resolution. They found the defect. They said, well, what do we do with cures? They started looking for off-label use of pharmaceuticals, not the typical use, but might have a parallel kind of thing. And then Matt started to test them on himself. He became his own FDA. One of those worked out. He gave it to Bertrand. Didn't cause any side effects for Matt. Gave it to Bertrand. Bertrand had his first tears ever. So what happens in this case? Because this is like a movie. This is like what movies are made out of. When you take skills, when you take passion, and you allow them to be aligned with the problem that somebody needs to solve and have a direct ability to impact the problem, you literally chase down a kid's killer. Another example, that's Sonia and Eric. Sonia's mom died of a horrific genetic disease that steals away, it makes Alzheimer's look nice, destroys your brain capacity at a young age, middle age, and it's very, very painful. So she decided to get tested. She has a better than 50% probability that this disease is actually going to manifest in her. So they were a city planner and a lawyer, and they decided when they got this result, they need to think about this in a very different way. So they both quit their jobs. One became the wet lab part of science. The other became the computer science / data science component of this. They have a lab at the top institution in the world, the Broad Institute, who works on this problem, and they are literally spending every ounce of their time hunting down her killer now. People have radically retooled and changed their entire trajectory in life to chase this down, and they are doing some of the most cutting-edge breakthrough science right now. What enables that? Not only breakthroughs in genetic sequencing, but also in the data science component. None of this works without the data science component as well. We have all these incredible people that we've been able to bring to the government. They're called Presidential Innovation Fellows. They come from all sorts of science, technology backgrounds. They come to spend a year in the government, and they work on incredibly hard problems. One of those people is Alan Sternberg. Alan built this company called Weather Underground. He's a top weather expert. He also was the original guy who coded up the PageRank algorithm, so he knows some things about technology. And we brought him into the National Weather Service and to say, how could we open up the data from the Weather Service so more people could use it and get benefits? announced that we can do it on the cloud and put everything. And so people would say, well, what does he know about weather? Except he built one of the best weather prediction companies out there today. So you bring that talent and you bring it into the government. Now you can change the whole paradigm. Because of the work that they did by putting out the data on on these clouds, now people are able to run experiments that they never had a chance to. And the usage of this data has already skyrocketed through the roof. There were the original assessments of how much people would have done, and it's just gone gangbusters. So part of this understanding is every time we put a little bit of data out there or put a bit of data and technology together, disproportionate things have happened. When you put data on data.gov, which is the United States data repository, the first people who use it is another portion of the government because they've been trying to get access to it, and the other type of team is just saying, you're not going to get our data. No way. And so you're going through all these legal hoops, and now you can. And then the cool thing is we have all these incredible kids, literally kids, who are working with that data to come up with cool things. So this is Antwi. Antwi is using local city data that's kind of open data to find new economic opportunities for people, how people can be empowered at the local city level. This is Sujana. Sujana was at our White House Science Fair. She's using technology and data to go after the question of renal failure. You need a kidney replacement, those type things. She's so good. I think she's 18 here, 18 in this one. I'm intentionally not playing the sound because it's not relevant. But she's in this, what she's done is so powerful. University of Kentucky has given her an entire lab just to specialize in her work. So we have these kids who are now just transforming the world, and it's unbelievable. Oh, and speaking of kids, let me show you one of these other ones who I think is really a kid. Oh, one of the ones that also. So this is the lesbian, gay, and transgender community where we brought them together for a hackathon. And one of the important things why I'm showing you this is there's a lot of questions about where do good ideas come from. And then we got this group together at the White House to talk about what are the things that are needed to be built by the LGBT community for the LGBT community. And the ideas they had are stunning and unbelievable. And also equally empowering is I remember thinking like, these are not just problems for the LGBT community. These are real company ideas that should be funded now. Ideas come from populations that you don't always appreciate. The strength of the United States, the fundamental strength of the United States is our diversity. Male, female, religious, Christian, Hindu, Buddhist, Muslim, don't believe in religion. Where you're born, where you immigrate from. Immigration is our superpower this way. Bringing these people together and giving them a chance and a voice unlocks things that we are blind to. It gives us a much better perspective. This is Tilly. Tilly is holding my notebook with a bionic arm because she was born with a birth defect where her forearm is terminated about there. But she's got this arm. There's another person who's not in this picture. He's got a robotic arm where he's amputated as a motorcycle accident. They took his nerves, rewired them a little bit closer to the surface. He's got Bluetooth sensors around it and can control the arm fully. His arm is so strong that it could crush my skull, yet it has a dexterity that he can just deftly shake my hand. Once again, we built that for one person. How do we make sure it benefits all people? We're on the pathway of solving problems for single people, but not for large populations. And Tilly is one of those kids that is inspiring new models of ways to think about it. This is Rebecca and Kimberly. Rebecca and Kimberly launched a toy cat into space. She's 6 and they're 8. I don't know what you were doing at 6 or 8, but they will give you an inferiority complex because if you talk to them about space design, you realize like, wow, they're the future. You just have to give them a chance. And this toy cat actually did fine there. These guys here, Mike, Sam, and the crew, He's in a wheelchair, can code with one hand. It can code like a madman with one hand. He's designing systems to identify where sidewalks are not safe for people in a wheelchair, where they need to be fixed. The rest of the team are learning from, sorry, this is Steve. This is Steve. So Steve, the rest of the team is learning from Steve because we don't even know how many of us actually understand what it means to be living in a wheelchair or to have this kind of paralysis. And so Steve can teach us this. He goes by his Twitter handle is One Arm Coder. And it's amazing to see what happens if you give him the ability to actually code. One that I'm particularly proud of, this is our team from the United States that won the Math Olympiad. We hadn't won in over 30 years. We won back-to-back years. And so we had the team over from the White House to the White House. And one of the powerful things about that is what got us to shift. How did we go from losing to massively winning? The big thing about there is we made it fun. They have a coach named Poe, and Poe just focuses on making it interesting. These kids don't live anywhere close to each other. They all trade notes and interact through Google Hangouts. The only time they meet is really at these math camps or at the competitions. So we're seeing this transformation, how digital technology can empower kids in a different way. My single goal that we still need to focus on is that this team needs to be better gender diverse. This is members of some of the Facebook team and the rest of the community who came together during a hackathon to focus on how we can address suicide problems, especially in our veterans population, people who served in our military. And they're coming up with all sorts of clever ways to bring the technology that they've learned and wisdom they've learned in companies like Facebook to find new models on how to actually get people services that they need. And one of the ones that I've recently rejoined is the board of Crisis Text Line, which is a suicide platform, a suicide prevention platform that uses text messaging to get you the help you need, because people, let's face it, we don't call anymore, we text each other. So why not have a text messaging platform to get help? Finally, let me go into this because this is a little tougher one. This young girl here that's pointing to her dad. That's Jake Brewer. Jake Brewer used to be on our team, phenomenal data guy. He was killed while at the White House, while serving at the White House. And he was raising money to support cancer research. And Jake, he wrote 2 emails to me. His very last email to me was titled Ultimate Frisbee, and in it was South Lawn, how do we make it happen, which is the lawn in front of the White House. So we never played actually Ultimate on the South Lawn, but we did play at Camp David, which is a personal retreat for the president. But his second to last email that Jake wrote was this, saying that every American should think about the pledge they take to really serve. And the reason I'm sharing it here is because I don't think it's a pledge for America. I think it's a pledge of technologists and everybody for the world. Because this is our world, and we should be focused on what's going to make this world better for our kids and our kids' kids. I think it starts with this. And so this is what he says. And I think you substitute American for Indian, Mexican, Russian, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, doesn't matter. Substitute world citizen. I pledge to be an active American, in this case Indian, to show up for others, to govern myself, to help govern my community. I recommit myself to my country's creed to cherish liberty as a responsibility. I pledge to serve and to push my country when right, to be kept right, when wrong, to be set right. Wherever my ancestors and I were born, I claim America, or India in this case, and I pledge to live like a citizen. It's a great reminder. It's a phenomenal reminder of what we're supposed to be doing. What does it mean to build a technology and use this data in novel ways that you wouldn't expect? So the 3 principles I want you to take away. As we think about data, people are always greater than data. You know, we talk about edge cases all the time. We love to talk about edge cases of a product. That's an edge case. Edge cases have names. Could be Sam, could be Shirley, could be Shilpa, could be Vaid, could be Samara. They have names. We have to remember what gives us courage to challenge ourselves to do better on those edge cases. To do that, data is a force multiplier in problems you would have never expected to find data working. Criminal justice, social reform, clean water, energy. Data is that force multiplier. The number one overall is the time to engage and work on these problems is now. Because we're in a very challenging time of society, and we have to get there and start figuring out what to do with it. So let me end with this part of, this is a card I kept in my White House diary all the time. The first part is just a reminder how to think about time scale. It says, dream in years, plan in months, evaluate in weeks, ship daily. Always be moving. Always be moving. But plan in years. Plan on the long. Never let the urgent get in the way of the important. The White House, I assure you, every day you wake up with 2 crises, if you're lucky. But you can't let that derail what the long-term goals that we have to get to make the world a better place. The second portion right here is about how do you actually do that? How do you build your products? Just in the case of that criminal justice, you prototype for 1x. You try it out in that small case. Here's a size of 1. A police officer saves Pete Early's life. Kevin's life, right? And goes to Pete's, his father. Build for 10x. Okay, now we got 10x. We got a city that can do it. Miami-Dade, the county is doing it. Great. We need to engineer it now for 100x. Let's make it work for the entire United States. Let's build it out faster, bigger. All the different things are required. The 2 metrics that we always focus on. What's required to cut the timeline in half? What's required to cut the timeline in half? And the other one is what needs to double the impact. This is super obvious in social networking or any consumer internet company. Because you say, what's the time required to cut the timeline in half of the product delivery? Or if you're in social networking, it would be, hey, you have to get to a certain number of connections. Maybe it's 100 connections. How do I cut that time in half? And then how do I cut that time in half again? And then half again, and so on. What's it takes to double the impact? If you're at 10 connections, how do I get you, or to say 50 connections, how do I get you to 100 connections, and how do I get you to 200 connections, then 400 connections, and so on. And if you combine those 2 together, now it's even more powerful. How do I cut down both the time it takes while doubling the impact? Why is this so important? It's a subtle trick, especially for those of you that are involved in product, is it puts your trajectory now on a logarithmic scale, which therefore means everything you prioritize has an exponential impact. All too often we work on things where we eke out only percents. But if you start asking yourself this way, it goes on this exponential curve. The crazy part about this is you think like this is for a startup. This is what we did at the White House. This is how we rolled out and thought about our technology and our social programs and everything. Everything we did stemmed from these kind of 3 buckets. It is also the same 3 buckets of how we built LinkedIn and Relate IQ. So I think they can work for all of us. So let me go back to this about data science. We talk much more about the other aspects of it. Because I told you a lot about how data science is working and doing all these other things. But I haven't shown you a single graph, haven't shown you any equations. The only thing I've done to teach you about the power of data is tell you the names and the stories of people where data has transformed their lives and has the potential as a result to change the world. And that's the most important thing that I can convey to you of everything that I've learned. Everything I've learned around data singularly comes down to focus on the people, and that will lead you to the bigger problems. Focus on the people, and it'll lead you to the bigger problems. So thank you for listening, and let's take some questions. How would you like to do this?
Have the Q&A round
Yeah.
of the shortlisted. So, guys, we had requested y'all to send us a lot of questions, and we got overwhelming response, 200 plus. We've shortlisted about 9. So, Mayuresh is going to do a question and answer. Thank you, sir,
Yep.
for such a brilliant talk, inspiring so many of us today.
Hello.
I had read it or maybe seen it on YouTube on one of your interviews somewhere where you were talking about data science education and how your time at University of California, San Diego, right, was. So basically what he said was he used to attend as many classes as possible because knowledge was always out there. And I think Baba Ranchhod Das said the same thing, right? he, Knowledge is everywhere, jitna le sako, just grab it. And I think that's what he's also said time and again. So guys, whoever is right now pursuing data science and trying to build their careers as data scientists, I think that's one key piece of advice as well, that just go for it, just do whatever you can, just assimilate knowledge, come to meetups, network with people, gain knowledge. Power of community is something that's going to take you long, long way. So, yeah,
You want me to say a little bit about it?
yeah, sure, please.
So, it, for those that don't know, to say I was a bad student is a little bit of an understatement. So I did not get into college right away. If there was equivalent of an IIT exam, I would have been at the lowest of the ranks. My SAT scores were, I think it was like 1024, which is really bad at that time. They recalibrated them. So I was not a good student. I also got in a fair amount of trouble. I got kicked out of my math class. I got suspended from my high school. I had my rights read to me. I was all within like 6 months or something, maybe 3 months. So I really was not. And you can go ahead and close that. Yeah. So I really wasn't good. But what changed? But what I was always doing was I was always super curious, and I think that's the number one skill and advice I'd give you is just you stay curious. And I'll tell you the things where I learned. I had access to incredible scientists and all these type of people at the White House. The people who taught me the most is the people. It's environments where you least expect it. I had an opportunity to visit a jail and a number of inmates, and the question I would often ask people was, "What would you like me to make sure the president knows tomorrow morning?" And you would hear the most amazing answers, and people would tell you probably, and you'd say, "I never ever thought of that," and that is a super smart way of thinking about it. And you just have to be open to listening. One way of open is by going to classes, learning, doing all those things. Another one that is equally powerful is making sure you're meeting up in communities like this, coming together, trading notes, sharing. It's how this data scientist term got coined. It's because we were trading notes. But it's also being open in your brain, open in your heart, open in your soul. India has a special ability to do this because it is it's just part of the culture and goes, it's part of who we are. So you get a leg up on it.
Thank you so much, DJ. So this has been a very different kind of a session. We started DataGiri and
For good or bad, it's up to you to decide.
definitely for a good. And I think the way we used to start was, the first few sessions were absolutely free, freewheeling. We just had some really marquee speakers, and we were not doing a lot of profiling per se. But then we really got into like, why don't you share your deck first? You'll go to your GitHub repository. So we didn't do all of that with you, but uh, so it was really very. And this has been like a revelation of sorts. I think just to conclude the last parts where you said not a single graph, not a single equation. I think just about focusing on people that really somewhere sums up the whole experience for a lot of us. So I think what we have done today is we actually reached out to a lot of folks. Close to 600, 700 people said they want to come here. We had to put close to 350 of them on wait list. So sorry for all of that. And It's getting live telecasted to a lot of people across the web. So nonetheless, we invited a lot of questions. So we had close to 200 questions, and it's not possible to take a lot of them right now. So we've just handpicked a few of them, and we would be kind of just going through them in this particular session. So the attempt over here is to just invite the same set of people to stand up at their respective place and then introduce them. If you could just introduce yourself, and your question would be popping up on the screen, so that's for the benefit of the larger audience. And if you could pose the same question to DJ in your way, and if you could oblige us and just help us with the perspective that you have on it. So if you could start, can we have Paul M? Perfect.
Welcome, Paul.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm Paul Meinshausen. I'm a data scientist. I'm based in Bangalore. Great
Thanks
to,
for coming up.
yeah, absolutely. Used to live in Mumbai. It's always a good chance to get back, but seeing you speak is super. Big fan of your books, Data Jiu-Jitsu, etc.
We're all free.
It's true. It's an important attribute. So you presented so many really interesting cases that you worked on at the White House, and I'm sure you saw way more than that. A lot of interesting, exciting, challenging problems came across your purview, and you couldn't solve all of them, and a lot of them, in order for you to apply data science in an effective, efficient way, would have required, the collaboration and participation of the agencies and organizations closest to it. So given all that, I imagine it must have been really important for you to prioritize and decide where to focus in and where to expend your attention. And I think that's probably a problem that most data scientists face, most organizations face. I'm just curious to hear do you have a particular framework or approach for how you did that? And maybe did it change over time as, over the course of your work there and develop as you experienced the results?
Right. This is a superb question because it's, I think, one of the ones that if we actually step back, where do we lose most of our energy in a day? It's because we're not working on what we're supposed to. Like we're all cleaning data instead of actually coming up with an insight. So thank you for bringing this up. So I'll tell you how we did it at the White House. And so when I first got to the White House, or even before, as we're kind of working with thinking like, what would be the strategic frame of the problems that would come from the mission statement to responsibly unleash the power of data, benefit all Americans. And we kind of had this list and framework of things that I thought were interesting. And so luckily there's a board of advisors around science and technology that President Obama has. President Trump has the ability to use them if he actually ever, well, moving on. So the team, one of the people that I was presenting it to, I sort of laid it out, is Eric Schmidt came up to me afterward, the chairperson of Alphabet, CEO of Google for a long time. Came up and he said, DJ, that's really good. I think you're working in the hundreds of $1 billion range. He said, your job is to only think of $1 trillion and up. And he just walked away. Like, thanks, Eric. I was like, what? $1 trillion? Like, what is $1 trillion problem? And so kind of took it back to the team. We thought about it, and we're like, that's actually a really interesting question. So we looked at our stuff and we're like, oh, you know what? You're right. We haven't prioritized this quite correctly. And so we said, we're going to only take problems that are $1 trillion and up. They impact half of the United States population, or they take a population that has no recourse. Healthcare, criminal justice are $1 trillion problems, and also align with presidential priorities, because that means the rest of the building can work with you. Otherwise, you're just going alone as a team. A population with no recourse, the LGBT population. The $1 trillion problems always impact half the population. Another one that was there is traffic fatalities, which are have moved dramatically up in the United States. They now 100 Americans will die every day on our roads, and the first derivative is going the wrong way. It's increasing, and we don't know why. Don't know why. Is it distracted driving? Is it cheaper gas, bigger cars, better fuel efficiency, more bike lanes. We don't know. So in all those cases, we asked, there's a ton of projects where we said, what are the ones where we want to go after and we want to have material wins? Wins meaning wins that are directly felt by the population. So there was a ton of things that came across, and people would say, I need your time, and be like, no, we can't do that. There's also plenty of things that would come across our desk and saying, I don't want to do that, but if we don't, we're going to have a real problem. We had 2 hurricanes bearing down around the coast of Florida, and a lot of people were going to die. So one of the questions really quickly was, what do we have people evacuate, or how we can figure out what to do? So what's a data scientist supposed to do in that situation? So this is classic situation room, National Security Council, all of us are there. It's, we know what the governor is saying. It's like, you got to go now, because if you don't go, bad stuff is about to happen. So the question was, well, do we know if people are evacuated? And so I said, well, I have an idea. People would like it, or I can talk about it later. And they said, well, let's hear it, because we're open to all good ideas right now. And said, what about just asking the phone companies for how many kilobytes are going through their cell towers? Well, and we don't even need the actual kilobytes. I just need the ratio of what they're seeing on data usage right now versus what they see on typical load. And then we just use the census data to basically extrapolate what percentage of the population has actually left. They were like, you can do this? Like, yeah, it's just, this is simple stuff. But that suddenly becomes the chain of like actually how we can actually use data in a disproportionate way around a time sensitive thing. But once that's off our plate and the team is moving, I'm back onto my priorities. I've handed that back off to the team that has the responsibility of doing it. So part of that lesson is you are always trying to fire yourself out of a job. I always focus, me and my team both, getting out of my job so that we can backfill it with people who love that type of work if it's work that I didn't like, or find people who are better than me for the other kind of work. And so the person who ran the criminal justice portion of the portfolio, Lynn Overman and Kelly Jin, well, Lynn is a former public defender, and she's worked on these problems, and she's also run the open data portfolio. And then Kelly used to be one of the top data people for the city of Boston. So suddenly I've got people who are 10 times better than me, not just 1x better than me. They are 10 times better than me on this. And then that's how we start changing the total net focus of the prioritization. Really good question.
Thank you so much, DJ. So we've actually had a lot of questions from, since you have done a lot of work with the federal government and the White House. So a lot of people are really curious. I mean, this is just a sample question, but how data science can be used in policy space and how it can be impacted in government as such. So there is we have Dhwani Bafna with us, and Dhwani has a question around the same. So if you could just introduce yourself and
Hi, I work at Columbia University's Global Center in Bombay, for the education portfolio. And essentially, my question is, we've heard amazing stories from you on how you've used data in the US, and all the stories are extremely, extremely inspirational. How can we do that in India, considering the fact that we have a lot of data, which is archived in the government, often let loose, often not available. It's really, really, really difficult to find data on government portals. You really have to, look at paper trails. What can we do to use it efficiently, and also like kind of close the open loops, secure it? And lastly, how can that then lead to people having better access to information and then improving public services? Because there's so much data and so many people to cater to. I'm really interested in knowing, how can we do that in India?
So to start with, here are 2 thoughts. The first is, India is a democracy, democratic process. The hallmarks of a democratic process are transparency and accountability. This isn't an American ideal. This actually goes back to the Greek system. They used to put tablets out in front to actually have transparency around how things were spent, where money was going, written into the stone tablets. So it's a time-old tradition. There's also this other aspect that I think all of us should appreciate is that who and where did data science come from? In the Indus Valley is where zero came from. The original astronomy and all of the work that was there, that is data science. You're taking observations, you're coming up with equations and trying to understand and interpret a very complex system. India actually has a natural arc. We've actually deviated from that arc of actually using data for transparency, responsibility, and innovation. But it's always been there. And reminding people of that, I think, first grounds us in what our responsibility to institutional paths is. The more tactical component is actually helping people see that if you unlock the data, ridiculous more good things will happen. And you have to make sure to figure out how to find those cases, celebrate them, and show them the power and potential. We don't have to go all out there and say, like, all data is open right away. That would be great if we can. But let's start at 1x. Let's get results and value out of that 1x. Get 10x. And then let's figure out how to engineer it for 100x. The US system is still at a 10xer. A bunch of the data has been open, it's been utilized. A bunch of the data can be referenced through data.gov, but we haven't figured out the 100x solution yet to make it engineering awesome. Why do I say that? It's hard to get feedback on how the data is being used. And so even if a government puts the data out there, like, I don't think anybody's listening, and they don't feel inspired to do it. They're sitting on legacy systems. We have to get infrastructure there to power it. One of the places that I think this is going to be really particularly useful with data is healthcare data, poverty data, and getting people to say, well, like, if you add a little bit more. This doesn't just happen outside. As a community, we all have to rally towards it. In political debates and everything, people got to make sure questions are asked about it. People are challenging people about it, like forcing politicians to make promises and commitments to it. The other one is that you have to figure out how to get partnerships with the government. That means going in and actually serving. President Obama could have said, I'm all for data, and if he didn't have us actually coming in and working, it would have never happened. We saw what happened with healthcare.gov for those who were paying attention when you didn't have technologists running the system. These systems fail very quickly. So you have to have really top tier technologists at the table, hand in hand, not politicians and policymakers and then technologists. Everyone's got to be at the table equally. And that's how you get to better decision-making process. It's also how you also make sure the data is being used responsibly and securely. And one of the things that I think is important, what we should all address in making sure that happens is every data science training program that's out there in the world, we have called for, at least that are under the purview of the United States, we said that every one of those programs must have ethics and security as core central parts of the curriculum, not just some elective. Because when you build a database, if you don't know about overflow and injection attacks, that's crazy in this day and age. You gotta have all that stuff together. The other part about that is how do you make sure, that's the security side. The ethics gives us a framework on how to have language, common language. Is this okay or not? The ADAR system and the conversations that are going around privacy right now, what I see as one of the challenges is people are using very different vocabularies and having conversations of one type or another. And so they're mixing policy and ethics and legality all simultaneously. That makes it very hard to have a healthy, constructive discussion. Also, combined with the policy question of what is good policy, what is good technology, and making sure that we're not saying, ooh, look, we built an amazing hammer, let's use it for every single nail out there when it wasn't designed for that. That's the robustness and sophistication that I think would serve everyone better. And the people who are designed and best optimized to do that are all of you.
Fantastic. So we have like small goodies for all the questions that are getting selected. And so if you could just quickly hand it over to them then and there, would be fantastic. So
It's some messy data. That's what you get.
Nice. So next we have with us Jacob Joseph. So Jacob Joseph is a practicing data scientist, actually head of data science at CleverTap. And he has some questions for us around how technology and data science and one enables the other. Please.
Basically, AI has been in existence since decades, right?
Yeah.
But over the past decade, it has really seen a a lot of commercial applications getting successful. And a lot of it is also because of the enabling ecosystem, which has, like a lot of computing power being available. The cost also is reasonable. So it's not only important that you have like a good idea, innovative idea, but also you need a good ecosystem. And the time factor also is a very important. So what is the right time for that? So what, according to you, maybe in the next couple of years, are such innovative ideas for which that great time has, arrived?
Great. So let's take two parts of that. So interestingly enough, when we were early on and we started using much more machine learning algorithms, which were classically described as AI back in the 70s and 80s, we thought about, well, what do we call this? And we strongly said we're not calling it AI. Like, well, because we knew that that was such a bad term because there was overhyped and it just wrecked the whole system. And so we have really started to just reinvent. I was very lucky that my father had forced me to sort of sit down through a lot of these discussions over the time around things like time schedulers and the PDP-11 time periods and these type of things. So when LinkedIn was building some of the early Hadoop systems and there was a bunch of problems, I was like, oh, this is a time scheduling problem. So I just went to my dad and I was like, so about that time scheduler, how did those originally work? And our system that time was called Zookeeper. Sorry, not Zookeeper, Azkaban. That Azkaban system is literally a sort of update of the old time schedulers. So there's a lot of really great wisdom that's out there that's, if you just look, you can take it and it can be reinvented almost in a similar way. Data science. What is data science? Beats me what data science is, as long as it gets you paid more. But in all honesty, like what data science does, and by calling ourselves data scientists, it gives us permission to do a lot more. If you're a business analyst or you're an engineer, you're only relegated to a certain set of problems. Nobody was like, you could work on these other things. When you're a data scientist, you can do all these other things. You play with data. That's what you tend to do. But you do a whole bunch of engineering. You do a whole bunch of math. You may do a whole bunch of storytelling. You may do a whole bunch of product. You may do a whole bunch of design. As long as you're bringing all those things together, that's the power, fundamental power, I think, of what data science is. And by narrowly defining data science, that's data science, this isn't data science, we're actually doing ourselves a disservice because it's the ambiguity that gets us there. I bet like in Infosys, if you showed up and you're like, hey, I'm the data scientist, they're like, well, why is he here? And they're like, because he's a data scientist. Oh, right. Now, if you were the designer, they'd be like, what's design got to do with this? It's funny how we love to put ourselves in labels without really asking what we're capable of. And data science, if it affords us that ability to move around and do much more, let's embrace that. Let's make the tent bigger. Let's make the table bigger. That's what makes us come together and do more. The problem sets that I think this is going to disproportionately impact as a result of making it table bigger and doing more is much more diverse. So Internet of Things, I think, is going to be phenomenal. I also think security of digital assets and what people are typically calling cybersecurity is a data science problem. First, you got to find signal in the noise. Second, when the attacker is changing as fast, you're going to have to use adaptive learning techniques to go and defend. Offensive, will, as we know, will no longer be first strike kinetic, meaning like a bomb, an exothermic reaction. It will be cyber, some form of cyber. And as a result, we better make sure we have those defenses. We saw the United States, the most powerful democratic process or democratic system, attacked. Our system was attacked. Should be very crystal clear about that. Attacked because people stole data, because people put in propaganda and abused systems, and those systems did not have the safeguards. That same attack form was used in France, and it will be used in the Indian election system. Because there are lots of people who are very interested and wrecking the world's largest democracy. That's data science. I also think there's a fundamental, powerful aspect of how do we help our brothers and sisters that don't have opportunity. And what that's going to be doing is just fundamentally just sitting down with them and learning what's in their life and how can we improve it. We do that when we build a company. We call it user research. What I would encourage all of you to do is instead of starting with your head, start with your heart. Focus problems with your heart. The harder the problem, the more you have to start with your heart. Because there's too many reasons to say no. And when the problem gets hard, it's too many good reasons to quit. But the outcome of working on harders is disproportionately beneficial. Disproportionately beneficial for your soul because you see the impact for society, but also economically. The economics of working on really great things are massive. This is why you're seeing these incredible funding rounds around companies that are in the medical space in Silicon Valley, like Grail Bio and Color Genomics and other things. Take hard problems. Hard problems are hard. It's what makes them good to go after.
Thank you so much, Jacob. I hope you found the answer. Just a small memento. So next we have is Tanvi Purohit. Tanvi, if you could, yeah, please. And Tanvi is with Deloitte India, and she'll just be, I think this is rather a...
My question is quite generic. I guess that would just add some motivation to the community. I would like to hear, like, what was the most critical challenge that you faced in the entire journey of becoming a data science, just from a student into a Maryland and getting into a White House as a data scientist? Sure, I mean, definitely there would be a lot of challenges. I would like to hear some story on that.
Yeah, great question, Tanvi. So my greatest challenge has been finding ways for people to give me a chance. When I was in elementary school or in middle school, I had a teacher who just refused to give me a chance. Actually, actively dissuaded me from taking chances. I had a lot of people who said, nope, you should not be in the sciences. When I was a graduate student in mathematics, I got the second lowest score on one of my qualifiers. The lowest score was because somebody didn't show up. True story. It's a numerical analysis was a qualifier. And the next time qualifiers came around, I did have the high score. I started from way behind, and people just didn't believe. They just couldn't see why. When I got to Silicon Valley, and I grew up in Silicon Valley, and you may know about my father, he's a pretty well-known technologist. So you imagine the stress that I put on him. And I came back to Silicon Valley, no one wanted to take a chance on me. They were like, oh, you seem like this smart science guy, and you're doing all this diplomacy and trying to chase around finding bad guys about bioweapons, and you're weird. That's what basically was the answer. So Yahoo passed on me, Google passed on me. The way I got my job at eBay was my mom happened to go to dinner with the president of Skype at the time, Rajiv Dutta, and she harassed him so much that he finally was willing to do a 15-minute call with me. So yes, my mom got me my job. But LinkedIn passed on me. Reed knew about me. He knew about my resume. He saw my stuff. And even then, and Reed is now become one of my best friends. Reed Hoffman is one of my best friends. And we've been through building a lot of different things together. So how do you go from that to this total flip sides? Just because somebody has to give you a chance. And then the rest of it is you have to own it. So what I would love to see, and I was fortunate to give a commencement speech about one of the high school principal who suspended me. Because that high school principal, his name was Mr. Knapp, Bill Knapp. I'm sorry, Richard Knapp. And Mr. Knapp not only suspended me, but he also later on put me in the Super Honors Leadership Program. And so what I think is there is we're all here because someone took a chance on us in some way. Mr. Knapp took a chance on me. Who are you going to be a Mr. Knapp to? Who can you actively take a chance on? There'll be a little bit of a risk, but if you really look at it, it's not a risk. It's just because it's going to cost you some energy. But imagine how good you're going to feel when it happens. Some of those people are going to break your heart. Some of them are going to crush you. But if one of those break through, imagine how much better the world is going to be. It's so easy to find ways to say no. We have to fight for the yes. It's not a yes and not a no until it's a yes. Water against stone. You have to find ways to get there.
Thank you so much. I think thank you for giving DataGiri a chance. I think DataGiri is never going to be same post this. So thank you. We have another question from Rishu Jain, and Rishu again has question about how data sciences can be applied to. We always in India from a services perspective see a lot of BFSI and healthcare kind of being done, a lot of use cases over there. But how about something else? So if you could.
So hi, my name is Rishu, and I'm working as an analyst at Hansa Security. So I've seen a lot of data science implementations for BFSI organizations, retail, automobile, and many other more. But when can we see data science solutions being implemented for solving basic human problems, like say healthcare, as you mentioned earlier, improving the traffic congestion, defense, education, and yeah, various other sectors.
Great. And this is the one thing I want to take away is that the time of data science being the force multiplier now for society on these things. It's really now. Like that time has come. The technology is there. It's still super brittle. It's very painful. It's tough to clean data. It's tough to build on others' work. But the impacts are there. Like we have enough 1x solutions that prove that the value proposition is true. We now need to figure out how to make it 10x, 100x. And let me just point out, if you look at how much investment India has in smart grid and all these other things, why is it that all the technologies that are used to support these, Hadoop, Kafka, Spark, these are all US-based technologies? There's no reason that these technologies can't be implemented and built here. I mean, no one cares fundamentally if you're a committer in India or you're a committer in the US or in Germany. They care about your code. They care about what you can do. Now, I'm sure there's a bunch of evangelization that's required around these technologies to make them work. But I fundamentally believe that this quality of tech can be completely done here. Why do I believe that so firmly? Well, one of the creators of Kafka is a woman named Neha Narkade. Neha also happens to be my cousin, but she trained here in India. She can do Kafka here. You look at all these great technologies, maybe people trained in India, they're here. A lot of the original Hadoop stack and other things are from people who were educated here. So we just have to decide that we want to build those solutions. And the best way to build solutions, like Kafka wasn't designed as like, gee, one day we should build Kafka. It was very much of, literally, I kid you not, it was like the moment I came out of this room, Jay Krebs had been playing with some of these ideas at LinkedIn around this stuff. And I came out of a meeting on our message bus architecture, and I was super furious because I was looking at the cost curve of what this was and what it's going to take to power the rest of the products. And I just remember going to Jay and I was like, Kafka full time now. We can't do it. We didn't call it Kafka. It was like we need a messaging bus platform that's going to allow rule logic on top of it, and we have to have this. So just tell me what it's going to cost. Tell me what needs to be moved around the product roadmap, and I'll just go make it happen. But enough is enough. We have to go. It's problem first, technology second. And then we figured out how to generalize the technology. So it was very much a 1x to 10x to 100x. And in that 100x now, a company's been started looks like it's going to do phenomenally well. And it's going to empower, I hope, like I would love to see Kafka being used for people to think about how to more accurately distribute energy as well as water solutions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, DJ. So um, we have a next question from Swastika Jain. Perfect. So this question is more on the educational side of things. How does an aspirant make it through and cut it in the whole field of data science?
Hello, sir. I'm Swastika, and I'm a student at SPJN Institute of Management and Research. It's really good to see you in person. Sir, how to ensure that we do not get lost in the ocean of data science material that is available on the internet, and we transition our, charter our path towards a data science career. And another thing that I had in my mind was that is a PhD really required for, just having a presence there in the data science field? One question I do have is that I was very curious to know about your personal goals. I mean, in terms of you contributing to India for data science, because you have already contributed there in US. Is there something that... Thank you, sir.
Ooh, the seat got hotter. Which order to take this in? So the first, let's take it in the order you presented it. So the first is, there is so much data info courses and information and classes out there. It's truly remarkable. I am a massive fan of project-based work. I love, there's so much out there. It's like saying if you want to be an electrical engineer, there's too much choice. Like, where do you start? You have to start with a problem, and then if you fall in love with the problem, the solutions carry forward. I was a great beneficiary of this myself personally. That I did have a bunch of very core theoretical classes as a mathematician, but I remember one of the times where I was playing with sardine data, because there's a big population of, we have a big problem in California, is that the sardine population had collapsed. And a lot of people had depended on this food supply, and no one could really figure it out. So I got interested. I was playing with this data, and one of the things that I had to learn about was fast Fourier transforms. But and the class I was taking was on fast Fourier transform and complex analysis. And as a result, I was like, ooh, I now know how to combine this theory with what I'm doing. And I learned the subject in a completely different way. And I went well beyond the curriculum. And I still utilize that. And I think one of the digital signal processing still has a huge role to play in data science, and it's something that isn't taught. Well, if you start with a problem, you'll learn it. And so making it project-based. The other thing is, don't learn data science alone. Do not learn it alone. Always do data science with a team. Even if it's just advice or input or a critique, you need to have somebody with it. Data science is a team sport because it is so multidimensional. You got to have it as a team-based effort. And when you make it as a team-based effort, somebody will say, ooh, did you learn about this? Did you learn about that? All these different things. The power that I had and the benefit I had of going through a PhD program is I had an amazing set of cohort of people who were equally minded of coding and doing all these things. And so I'd learn about new coding techniques from them. I learned about agent-based modeling and genetic algorithms, and these things that were not being taught in class at all, or I didn't know where to find the class. But because they were doing it and they were coding it, I would just listen along, and I was like, ooh, wow, that's kind of interesting, even though it had no relevancy to my work. But over the years, I have found I'm so grateful that we would just, kind of talk about these things over tea and coffee and just kind of learn. And so I find it imperative that you have that. The good news is you don't have to go get a PhD now to have those conversations. There's meetups. Like before, there weren't meetups. It wasn't an easy way to get the word out. There wasn't an easy way to say, hey, I have a question. You had to work really hard to find people. So I absolutely do not believe you need a PhD to do this work. I think you need a PhD if you want to love working on a problem and you want to do it within a rigorous academic environment. Then I think it's fantastic. PhD is about apprenticeship more. I don't know if it was the same for you, but I found it, mine at least, was about apprenticing amongst a certain set of people. That set of people that I was in love with working on was very academic. But the same thing happened to me when we were building LinkedIn. You know, I feel like I got another PhD when I went into the government. I was around all these other experts. And by the way, no one cared at the White House that I have a PhD. Like, no one cares. My sister loves to point out that when I got my doctorate, I went from stupid to doctor stupid. So the PhD is it trains you, and I think you should focus on it as a quality of training, and that's really the application of where it is. Now for that other question. What does India need? India doesn't need me. India needs you. You know, these things work when somebody comes out of the community. I immigrated from India when I was very young. We lived in rural Utah. There was one other family that was brown. And it was a walk. I don't know Hindi, I don't know Marathi because my grandparents helped raise me and they didn't speak English, and so they learned English by talking to us. There are a lot of cultural similarities that I'm grateful for. But what India needs to drive the empowerment is somebody from within. India does not need somebody from outside telling India what to do. So what's exciting for me is that someone here will take that charge and help make what does India really need from a chief data scientist, from a team of data scientists and others. And you can rest assured when that happens, you will have an open phone line to me anytime you need it, because that's what it means to have a partnership around the globe.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Swastika. That was a very insightful question. So we have Rohan next. So Rohan again wants to reflect back on, what we have, what we read in the popular media about AI and the job loss that's coming.
AI. I like it.
So Rohan, if you could just help us with your question.
Yeah, hello, Mr. DJ Patil. To begin with, we see a lot of people are losing jobs due to automation. So my question is, will machine learning and artificial intelligence help bring more jobs to people? If yes, could you please provide some examples or anything? And if no, what would you suggest like to be employed in future?
This is a really important question for the time we live in right now. And I like the way you framed it, is that automation, not just AI. Because we are seeing it's really automation. It's a combination of technology, robotics, machine that are starting to shift. This shift has been going along for quite some time. The ATM was a version of it. Now the mobile phone and fintech and being able to do all your banking on the phone is another portion of it. We're seeing this trend continue. You know, banks will be radically different as a result. We're seeing other places where a lot of the automation will also take place, and particularly as machine learning and AI start to become more powerful. And something in the United States, which we call e-discovery, electronic discovery for legal documents, this process has been really, it's not a human process anymore. It's really mostly computational. At the same time, we're seeing a lot of jobs opened up of that. So there's a very different step function of the jobs that will be opened and the jobs that are being displaced. And so over that time period, before we get to some new model or new equilibrium, it will be like what we've seen historically around the globe around any of these transitions of, you know, people being put out of work or having to transition. Factories, you know, people have picked food, child labor. In a lot of these cases, it's good. A lot of places, this is really good. Like, we don't want kids working in a factory. I want them in the school. So let's make sure they don't have to work in a place. But let's find a pathway to make sure that everything else is taken around them so they have the economic opportunity and their families are not, you know, being disproportionately impacted in a negative economic way. What is the exact solution for that? I don't know. I don't absolutely know. There's a recent post that was put out there by Tim O'Reilly on LinkedIn, and I can't remember the exact economist name who did this, but he did this assessment of looking at U.S. jobs numbers, and he found this thing very surprising. Something like, because we're seeing about 40% of our retail force being wiped out, our shopkeepers and others, because everyone's just buying online. And he looked at that number, and it was something, I believe, like 89,000 jobs were removed in the particular area, and it's been some in the last month, but it's been like 139 jobs added around these other areas, auxiliary to it, not just coding jobs, but these other areas to support. And so I think that's like we're early into understanding it. We also need to really start spending a lot more energy thinking about the policies. The one thing that I think is really important that we need to do, and Nandan and I were just talking about this in Bangalore on stage, is that the only thing and the advice I can give all of you is we must massively start investing in ourselves to keep re-educating ourselves, keep the curiosity alive. And we have to figure out how do we start investing in education more broad-based as a society. Like the IT wave that India has been riding on, I think that wave is going to start coming to an end. I don't know if it's just next year or in 10 years, but it's probably more like 10 years. But there'll be a new wave, and India has to switch from just servicing systems to making the art of creation and using this technology and systems to build new novel things. Data products should be built here, not managed and maintained here. That's the disservice to the quality of intellectual capital that exists in the country. The other place that I think we have to start asking is really around the ethical implications of AI and what happens in a world where an algorithm may not have been trained on all the data. And the way I kind of think is it's not quite accurate, but it kind of gets the point across is if somebody's designing a self-driving car in Palo Alto and you deploy in India, is it going to recognize somebody wearing a sari? It's not on the training set. Same thing is true if the person's handicapped and in a wheelchair. So how do we start thinking about the diversity of data sets? And by the way, these implications are real and happening right now. We just don't talk about them. So we have to ask, how do we actually get frameworks to actually understand what is behind those data, especially as they're more black box? Because even when they're not black box, we trust them too artificially. And we need to get prepared for that world as we hand more decision making that impacts our world to this. So, good question.
Thank you so much, Rohan. Thank you, DJ, for answering it at length. We just have a couple of more questions. So we'll first take the question from Tejas Bole. And so the question over here is, again, Tejas, if you're here.
Yeah.
Perfect.
University of Pune. All right. Thank you for making the trek down.
Thank you for such an interesting and inspirational talk. Being a student, this was a really interesting talk, and I'd like to ask you, when working on various products and say various ideas that you have to chase, how do you find the sweet spot or a balance between the theoretical knowledge that ML engulfs in? So that theoretical knowledge and the application of it and the actual tangible products that you make. So how is that balance achieved?
Wow. If you figure it out, you should write a book. I will buy the first copy. You know, this is one of the hardest things to figure out is how you invest. I have found, for me personally, it's always a parallel process, and it kind of interweaves with itself. The model that an author named Daniel Pink says, I think, which is really good, is in life we have to be a T. You know, we have to know a bunch of things increasingly, and that T is becoming broader all over time. But we also have to have really strong depth in something, and so you have to have a really firm foundation. When I was training, I started off in undergraduate as a computer science and political science double major. I never ever took a poli-sci class, but I switched over from computer science to math very quickly because what I found is the computer science program that I was taking didn't have enough of the theoretical foundation at that time to give me the ability to learn more on my own. So I was learning too much software development. I wasn't learning deep foundational type learning. the program at UCSD has now changed and is exceptionally theoretical and very good. But at the same time, you have to have glimmers of how is this foundational actually anchoring to real world problems and where does this go? And that's true regardless if this is theoretical sciences or even very applied. I think they're getting a sense of the scope of where things can actually have implications is always a good thing to do. The other one that's there is, and the thing that I still find myself doing, is making sure that the teams I'm on both have very applied people and very theoretical people. And so the theoretical people often propose something, I go, I never thought about that way, or I never actually knew you can have that kind of rigorous formality, but also seeing like, we got to go today. We got to be more aggressive. The approach of building companies and building things in this 1x, 10x, 100x paradigm, the most important thing I could tell you is, and the way we talk about it is, clever beats smart 9 times out of 10. You focus on the clever solutions. If you're building a product, you try to cheat a little bit. You try to get a little bit of an added benefit. And let me, because this is a data science group, let me go a little bit more specifics of what I mean by that. So in LinkedIn, we're building this job recommender. So I can recommend to Tejas, like, hey, look, I got great jobs for you. Now, if he's a student, he may say, look, any job is great. Just give me a recommendation. Like, thank you, right? But now let's suppose he's mid-tier or even senior. And now I give him a job and it says assistant. And he's like, assistant? I'm not an assistant. What if it's assistant defense minister? So now we got a problem here. How do I decide, like, assistant in some cases is super senior. In other cases, assistant is really junior. Now, I might be actually spot on for my algorithm, but that's not how it lands to him. He may say, whoa, seriously? You think this is that? You think I'm a fit for this? How dare you? So now he's pissed at the algorithm. And this could happen because of region, job type, company, whatever. It can go wrong in lots of ways. So now I know my machine learning algorithm and my product is pretty good, but I haven't given my product room to fail. I've given it very little room to actually interact and have a chance, because the mechanics are sound, but the way it lands is incorrect. So data in this case, it's a data product, so I'm thinking about the holistic experience. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give it to somebody else. I'm going to send it to one of your best friends. In fact, I'm going to send it to your girlfriend. And in that box, it's going to say, we found these great jobs that we think Tejas is good for. Click here to send these to him. Now your girlfriend is going to send it to you. So now who are you pissed at? Same algorithm. Same algorithm. But see, I've given myself a chance for the overall experience to actually be a positive one. And this is what I mean by clever, is that you can take something that's great and it's going to have a lot of failure when it interacts or hits you, but I can turn it just a little bit. And this is what we mean the art of jujitsu, out of jujitsu. It's being clever about the problem. And so you turn that. Now, the mechanics are still great, but I've learned about all these other things. And by the way, one of the approaches that people fail to recognize when you're building a data product, one of the really critical things that we encourage people to think about is the humanities. My minors, equivalent of minors, are called programs of concentration where I went, were in theater and psychology. And we're always focused on, well, how's this product going to appear? But should I go through another one of these to give an example? Is that helpful or not interesting? Raise your hand if it's interesting. All right, there's enough. So people you may know, Jonathan Goldman invented it. It's super important algorithm, really amazing, powerful work. And so we were operationalizing it, and we started to run into this problem where people were getting super freaked out. And they're getting freaked out because you'd go to a meetup, a bar, some place, you meet somebody, and then right away they're in your people you may know results, and you're like, whoa, LinkedIn, You guys are creeping me out. Are you in our inbox? Are you following me around? We were like, of course, we have all these people who just follow you around. But what was happening was a really interesting subtle phenomena that we figured out very quickly because we had people who were really focused on what does it feel like when this product hits you. Is what would happen is these people were in your results for a long time, but you actually are blind to them. You don't even see them. They don't even cognitively resonate because they're not there. And then you just met the person, and then they pop out massively, and you're just like, oh my gosh, now it's jarring. So it's super freaky. Okay, that one, we know the algorithms are really good at this point, and all we're doing is triangle closing. Like we're not doing anything super sophisticated. So what we should do in this case is we were trying to figure out like how do you alleviate this problem of fear, of creepiness. So the easiest thing you do is you just put underneath that box, well, you know so and so in common. The problem solved. That's a lot of hours of meetings, by the way, to get to like a simple solution. But the point is like these products aren't given room, and you can do a ton by as you build your product, not just thinking about it as data science. Think about it across 3 dimensions. We always ask 3 questions when we build anything. What do you want me to take away? What action do you want me to take? And how do you want me to feel? What do you want me to take away? What action do you want me to take? And how do you want me to feel? Most of the time when you get a data product, you're feeling like uninspired or freaked out or bored. What would it mean to have that product be exciting? What would it mean to have that graph or chart be interesting? We put all this energy into crafting the work. We don't do the last mile of actually building that out. Choose colors. We're human. We're human. We respond to these things. Don't take that away. Double down on it. But we have to go boy, girl, boy, girl.
Hi DJ, this is Ravi from Pune. So recently, you must have read that Elon Musk, commented that he would like to see regulation in the AI space. Although he does have access to cutting edge technology himself, he's afraid of AI as a risk to humanity. So he wants legislators to act on it on a proactive basis rather than reactive basis. So what are your thoughts on it?
Sure, thank you for bringing this up. So what Elon is talking about is what's referred to as general AI. And specific AI is like the machine learning for the self-driving car. So I think the big question, this was raised just the other day at MIT, which I think a lot of us have been facing by effectively the father of what's called CSAIL department, Computer Science and AI Lab, is what would you regulate? Like, what does it mean to regulate? We just say like, no more posting in GitHub? Like it's not obvious, like how do you regulate that? Like we know how to regulate certain types of medical work. Like we don't do cloning of certain types. We don't do other things. Now, how did we get there in the medical space is because we have a field called bioethics. So we have ethics that actually talk about that and help us get there. In this case, this is why it's so important to have ethics as a part of every curriculum. The other side of this is, you know, and I have not spoken to Elon about this, is that the Tesla is a AI product at this point. So wouldn't that regulate some of the things that he's doing? So I don't understand the gap. You know, in terms of problem priorities, I don't see like if you call in to like some voice recognition system on an IVR system, or you use Siri or any of these things, like it's still not working. I think we're really far away from general AI. If I had to pick a problem that I'd be worried about, it would be drug-resistant tuberculosis. It would be pandemic flu. It would be eradication of smallpox, or not smallpox, polio completely. It would be about climate change. It would be about nuclear war. Like those are the problems where we should focus on. Those are like the problems where humanity ends, like now, right? General AI, yeah, if we survive the pandemic, but that's like a long ways out. It's a long, long ways out. There's a lot other bigger threats to humanity right now that I would put way above there. And I would love, for example, to see that same level of attention, which I think he's doing a great job on of calling out why we need clean energy and renewable energy sources. That's where I would encourage the energy to be put.
Thank you so much. Last question. Yes, please.
I can do.
Myself, Poonam Gupta. Actually, recently I came across an article of Harvard studies wherein they inserted the data into bacteria. So, and also there was a robot singing in Walt Disney's World, Pandora. So we are just going towards, making machine human and making humans or living beings a machine. So where exactly we are heading towards, and what is the pros and cons of this in this coming 5 years?
Ooh, thank you for asking. This is really an interesting space. I think of us as data products, and we start with 4 building blocks, ATCG, and yet here we are. We can take in ridiculous amounts of information and process it extraordinarily fast. We can catch a ball, we can throw a ball, we can reason. That's a phenomenal amount that's built off just a little bit of data. We're finding also that data we barely even understand ourselves. We say there's this extraordinary amount of data just about our DNA. We have just begun to start thinking about the microbiome, the amount of data that sits as a bacteria in a symbiotic relationship within us, and what that actually does and how it manifests, and it actually determines overall health and wellness. So early phases. The bacteria one I thought was particularly fascinating is that you could use this actually in code. And people have been proposing these ideas for a long time. There's also questions around CRISPR and other type of gene editing things. I'll tell you the one where I get much more concerned about right now is somebody's shown, there's the most recent one was with President Obama, but someone had done one much earlier with President Bush, is that you can actually mimic a president saying anything you want through these new machine learning techniques. And what happens when somebody hears statements that either inflame or cause a huge amount of problem? And if, for those that are questioning the how much of that is a real issue, if you've seen what's happened in UAE and Qatar, that's a form of that, of hacking in and taking over on social media and causing a regional crisis, and a regional crisis that could explode into a much wider crisis very easily. And so I get really concerned there. The other place that I think we really need to start getting focused on is at the manipulation of biological components for weaponization, in particularly the weaponization by large state actors like Russia and around bioweapons. And what does that look like? The place where I'd like to see much more work done at that is the ability, and a group called PCAS, which is our sciences organization that supports the president through science advice. Under the Obama administration, the call was that our time from discovery of a pathogen to finding a solution is far too long. And we need to have an environment where we can go from discovery of Ebola to actual cure, or flu to cure, needs to happen in weeks, not months, if not years. And we need to get ready for that because of the changing nature of pathogens. And so it's a very double-edged sword there, because creation of biological weapons, virology, all these things, it's a deeper understanding. And these are open big problems right now.
Thank you so much. So, Bhumil.
Hi,
Who else has questions? Just
Hi, I'm Bhumil. My question is a bit specific. You spoke about inclusion at the start of your presentation. So, like, how do you? So, for example, when you've been working on social problems, how do you like when you're trying to find insights in your data? How do you ensure that the model that you're building it does not actually end up excluding certain people? So, for instance, I read a case study about some police like model for predicting whether a person is going to commit a crime or not, or something like that. And while they did not put in race as a factor, they added the number of times that the person has previously been caught, which turned out to be a proxy for race. So how do you find out that these things can happen, and how do you prevent them?
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought this up. So this is exactly what I'm talking about is under the ethics and understanding what's happening around algorithms. So what you're talking about is happening in an extraordinarily painful way right now across society. We had a bail calculation software that judges were using in the United States that was using race as a proxy for race and was disproportionately, it's a racist algorithm at the end of the day, is what it is. I mean, most predictive policing techniques are racist because it uses data from that have been heavily racially biased and use it to go in the system. You know, the cognitive bias that happens in this is extraordinary around all these things. You know, in the United States, we've seen these white supremacists who've come after people that they think are terrorists, and they've gone and attacked just people with turbans. They're attacking Sardarjis. So this is crazy, right? This bias that we have and how it manifests. It's the only way I know how to solve it right now is that you have to have diversity as you're building the systems. You have to have people at the table. So I find it ridiculous that people would want to build companies and technologies that support hundreds of millions of people, if not a billion people, and they don't have women on their boards and on their executive teams. Like that's crazy to me. Like I just don't see how you can get to thinking about things in a different way. You know, the one thing that I think is great here, lots of diversity here. This is great. This is great. We need more of that. So making sure that we lift up everybody and calling each other out when we don't have diversity, because that starts the process. It does not ensure it. And we do not know how to actually think about algorithmic, think about some people have proposed what are called institutional review boards for this, but we also know there's a lot of potential problems of how institutional review boards have been set up in the medical industry and need to be reformed. So, and that might slow down processes. There's maybe making data open. We're not quite sure how to do that. So a lot of this is an active area. A person who's been writing a lot about this is Kathy O'Neill. She has a book, Weapons of Math Destruction. I think we're just at the very beginning of understanding how to do this. And the challenge is society, building these data products is moving substantially faster. And people are not thinking about what the implications of this might be. And we're even seeing, personality tests being used for job interviews, academic decisions, these types of things. And so I'm very concerned about this part. So thank you for bringing it up.
Thanks, Bovil. So, gentleman in the blue.
Hi, DJ. Thanks for your insightful answers. Just one question that with the advent of automation, robotics, we are seeing, or there is a general feeling that lots of jobs may be lost. And with the society as India, the populous society that it is, and lots of first level, second level skilled labor being replaced by robotics, that would present a significant amount of social challenge in the future. So being in a techno-political space, how would you approach this problem, or how would you prepare for this problem when it creeps up?
Yeah. So the first thing that I would recommend India do and is that regardless, even under the status quo, India is going to have just under demographics and the youth that is coming up by 2025, that population is so large, there's no jobs for that population just itself. So that's the bulk problem. Then on top of that, there's a big part where automation is going to replace jobs and be something else. And then the question is, does automation actually open up more jobs there, or does it actually just destroy those jobs? So if I were in India right now, focusing just purely on policy, I would be asking, what are we going to do with this bulk? And in there, the sub bullet point is focus on the jobs that are going to be replaced by automation. And the reason I'd say it's a sub bullet that way is because if our solutions that we're coming up to is this is like do more IT jobs, that's not a good solution because they're going to just push them into this bucket. But I would encourage focusing on that big vehicle first. And the only answer I have as a good policy solution right now is on the educational bet. But I would make it a top priority across the country to start asking, how are we going to address this? Right up there with clean water and making sure that there's food for everyone to eat.
Thanks.
Just we'll take another last two questions. So one, the lady for sure, and one. Let's go with the gentleman in the blue coat, please. So if the lady can go. Please.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
So
Okay,
Veena,
first.
you go in first, please.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you
if
so
you
much.
have to leave, I understand. Yep, there's a.
My question is, everyone is working on data science, machine learning, everything. What the next of, suppose machine learning, after that deep learning, what the next? Because everyone is very enthusiastic about what exactly, because out of India, everyone is working, no doubt. All the things are old. Now the things are studying, learning in India now.
Right.
Suppose, again, what the next step?
Yeah. So what's next after deep learning? Where do you invest your time? How do you figure out these things? All these are tools. These are just tools. And I think there are great opportunities. And even if you look at people who specialize in deep learning, what they were doing 5 years ago versus now has changed. Just like in any sciences, as you evolve and you stay with the tool, it continues to develop and adapt to new things. So the focus that I encourage everyone to think about is, once again, is that T approach. Like, I am not a deep learning expert at all. I am, my mathematics and my understanding is very much on fluid mechanics and chaos theory. But what I do know is I know a bunch about these different ways and how to put it together to do different things. The place where I would substantially double down on is how do we actually build products with these things.
And one more, just if you don't have any issue with that, can you share or show something architecture diagram which you have worked till now in the White House stuff? I know it's a very different question, but still.
Yeah. So
I'm very into about that.
Yeah. So there's a funny quirk about the White House that you have to be very careful in how you give advice or direction, because legally there's what's called executive overreach, is that the work has to be done by the agencies. The White House is a coordination role. So like, for example, I can't just come up with a data analysis on my own. The agencies have to do it. And this is a legal reason for all sorts of good reasons of you can't just drive things. The one architecture, there was a funny story of I couldn't help myself in one thing when it was on the criminal justice of how do we actually design sandbox architectures. And so there was a whole bunch of execs in Silicon Valley. And so we just said, we were all kind of doing the paper version. I was like, screw this. And so we just got a giant whiteboard out and we just started to do all the architecture. And there was some funny quips and memes about that I actually still know how to draw cylinders and connect lines properly.
Thank you. And thanks to DataGiri also, because it's a very grateful event for us, because we got a chance to meet DJ. Okay, thank you.
Hello. So, hi, I am Vaibhav. My question is like working on data science projects requires a lot of effort, a lot of time. So how you, as we move up the ladder, there is a lot of responsibility also. How your advice to cope up with the stress which comes? And secondly, I have a question, like I am seeing you since a lot of years following you. You are in really good shape. So what part of data science?
what part of data science is embedded in your life? Like you use Fitbits or any? I mean, if you can advise, it's really good.
Uh, so my wife may not agree. uh, so the stress is it comes with stress is a really interesting deep, like we could have a whole session talking about stress. uh, Interestingly enough, tonight I'm going to a meditation class. So I think there's still a tremendous amount to learn about this. When I was frustrated at the White House, I got some great advice, which is somebody said, walk outside and just stand amongst the people that are there, that are come thousands of miles to just take a selfie in front of the building. And what does that flag on top of the building represent? And whenever I was depressed or frustrated with something, I would go do that and just stand there and just feel what the excitement it was when a group of kids would just kind of run up and just see that building. And what an honor it was to be able to say, I have a badge that lets me through, to have the responsibility that goes along with it. Uh, that that's a great way to kind of get yourself grounded. There's lots of other ways to get grounded. At LinkedIn, I would just spend time talking to customers. I also spent a lot of time talking to veterans and spent understanding that if we built LinkedIn in a certain way, we would help them. Connecting people in unique ways, getting services. So there's a lot that can be done there. You have to find a way to self-care. These journeys are long, they're hard. You have to find a way to do it. I am super fortunate that I have an incredible spouse that is highly more in tune with what type of projects I should be working on than I am. And there's a funny story about how her and the president actually decided to negotiate that I would do this job. I didn't actually negotiate this job. My wife and the president decided I would do this job because I said no. She and the president said yes. Well, I was sitting between them. Very awkward. But the part there that I think is most is, if you have a great team, you pick up the team sometimes, they pick you up the other times, and just be around amazing people. If you're in a job or an environment where people aren't ridiculously amazing, like ridiculously amazing, go find your type of people. Maybe you're stuck in that job and you don't have a choice. You don't have a choice because that's just life. Life is that way. Find your tribe outside. Tribe may be here. Tribe may be somewhere else. But find a tribe. Find your people. I tell people, when you're looking for a job, try to optimize, especially in your younger career. There's certain jobs that are 1x job. For every 1 year, it's 1 year. Some jobs are half a year. You learn at half the rate as what you should. Some jobs are 3x jobs. Some jobs are 10x jobs. 10x jobs is 10 years for every 1 year. 10x jobs, you are not going to survive very long at. It's not possible. If you're on an early stage rocket ship like a Facebook or a LinkedIn, it's exhausting and you are getting physically sick. The number of times I had pneumonia or just, literally near hospitalization was not small, just because you're working so hard. You look at what the presidency has done to President Obama or any president, before and after pictures. Stunning. The tenure at the White House is 18 months. Most people stay only 18 months. That's how long, that's how hard it is. You have to find the people that can inspire you to carry you forward. I'm also a big believer in that is fitness. Is if you aren't fit, you're not going to have, when times are tough, you're not going to have something extra to depend on. You need to be in shape mentally, spiritually, and physically to go and tackle really hard things. It's a full package that's required to do that. And that can mean you don't have to be like, some super bodybuilding kind of person. You just have to find your form of physical fitness. Could be walking, could be whatever. Got to eat healthy, all those types of things. and just be you. Let you be you. And if you do that, that is what's going to save your butt when things are really, really hard. And like I consider myself lucky that uh, because of that, I can carry through when times are ridiculously tough, and I can have a lot more. I can count on my body physically staying through when, and otherwise when. But overall, and that's why when people, nobody's asked me like what I'm doing next. Thank you for being so kind, because I am unemployed. But the part there that I'm working on right now is I'm working on getting physically back in shape. I was out of shape at the end of the White House. I'm getting back in shape mentally. I'm getting back in shape spiritually, because I would like to work on a hard problem again. But I also know that if I go like right now, I will fall back down. And by the way, please don't take my arc of things I've been so incredibly fortunate of like I only know how to win. That is far from the truth. You know, I had a $41 million startup failure. People thought I was dead in Silicon Valley. They thought there was no hope that I could ever get back up and do things. I've had incredible screw ups, but I've also had an incredible network. When I failed, my network said, hey, we still believe in you, and we are going to help you get back up, and we will find a home. That's how I ended up at Greylock Partners. I had an incredible network when I went into the White House that was saying, ooh, we're going to help make sure you're successful so that we will give you advice on the problems that you need as you go into that. I've had that along the way. Everyone has to find their own version of that. How do you find that version of it? Find a tribe. And when you find that tribe, find where someone's greatest pain point is. Look for someone's pain point. Remove that pain point. Find a way to take away their pain. When you take away their pain, you now have a different type of bond. That bond could be between, just a relationship in your home. It could be a relationship at work. It can be otherwise. But when you do that, that's what strengthens and gets people to have a different level of trust. And when times get tough, that's what you get to count on. That's how you come to a different level of expectations. And that's the only thing that you can really truly depend on as you work on the hardest of hard problems. None of this work that we love to put CEOs and leaders on this pedestal, not one of them ever does it alone. Ever. It's always they're building on top of other people's works. That's what it means to be human at the end of the day. We are a social animal, and we should embody that and embrace it.
Thank you so much, DJ. I think this has been much beyond data science, and we have been able to see a very personal side of what DJ Patil, and that's not what we intended or expected, but it has been an amazing thing. Another very significant data point that we have is that behind every successful man, we have a woman. So,
and a mom.
And a mom.
Because otherwise I'd never gotten a job.
So thank you so much for coming here. I would like to now invite Mitul for just closing remarks.
So for closing, thank you, DJ. It was like truly inspirational for all of us.
I'm actually an AI.
I would like to just go back to last August when we started this company. The idea was to just float community which is truly authentic, build an ecosystem where we get inspiration from each other. How can we accelerate the learning of each other? So that was the whole concept behind this community. One of these guys are like part of that. The first event as well. They are with us now. So on 6th of December, there was the guy named Tejas Zarekar. He's there? Okay, he's not around. So he said on Meetup that I don't know whether it's too much to ask for, but can you get DJ Patil for the meetup? And that's right there. Okay, so we responded to him saying that this gives us some serious goal for 2017, and it may be too ambitious, but we can tell you one thing that will give our 200%. And yeah. So the point I am bringing here is I'm really thankful to this guy. I mean, we never thought that we can really bring him, and we just saw his message on LinkedIn, and we just started contacting him. Everything worked out, and it was because of this power of this community. I mean, it was no commercial, nothing, no intent. It was power of this community where we really was trying to get him here. So thank you very much, everyone here, and. And one more request to all of you, keep giving us such goals. So we will keep on working, and whatever is happening on Meetup is really happening. So please giving us such goals. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks a lot.
So, guys, please share about this event on social media so you can go ahead with DataGiri with DJ. That's the hashtag DataGiri with DJ. So please go ahead with that. So DJ, if I understand, you're open for networking for another.
And let's give a final round of quick big applause for DJ. Hey, hold on. And hold. One last request. Uh, this meetup, we got tremendous response. We have 350 people on wait list. It's like if they're watching live, we are sincere apologies for that. But we request DJ, if you're around next time, we would like to do bigger event with you with much bigger crowd. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
One selfie request from your, if you can just, I don't know, you want to take it on your